First off, I want to thank the grace of heaven and the virtues of the masters, the mercy of the grand predecessors, transmitting masters, and everyone here today for this opportunity to discuss this topic of, well, the law of cause and effect, or karmic affinity and consequences. We all talk about karma, right, a lot, and so this is something that we need to understand because, well, it is a universal law, okay, and it affects our lives more than you know, actually. Okay, okay. All right. So, what is karma? Well, karma, actually, the definition of karma is, it's just any action that we take, any deed. Or, okay, so maybe in the definite, they might say use the word deed, because it's not necessarily bodily actions, right? It includes what we say, and also even what's in our mind, our thoughts. Okay, so so that's why maybe most people don't think of that, but it is. Okay, but it's definitely not human laws or religious laws of justice, right? We have a lot of human laws. We have, civil laws. We have criminal laws. Obviously, these laws are there to, I guess, to try to uh, prevent people from committing these, crimes or whatever. And if they do, then to maybe bring them to justice. But the justice, of course, that's human. That's the law of human justice, or the justice of human laws. Okay, so that the karmic or karma goes beyond that, right? So even when we have, let's say we did something, we broke the law, and okay, we get caught. Yeah, we get the consequence. Okay, maybe maybe we're speeding, driving too fast, whatever, we get a ticket. Okay, that's the consequence. In that case, okay, maybe there's no particular karma that's created, right? The karma is on top. Okay, when we have karmic consequences, that is on top of any, let's say, if we break the law while we're committing this karma, we might suffer the consequences of, the criminal justice system, the human laws. But karma, that doesn't care about that. Karma, if we happen to kill someone, even if it's accidental, okay, accidents, yeah, in terms of the law, sometimes, they say, oh, okay, if it's truly an accident, it's, then maybe there's no, or, it might be considered manslaughter or whatever. I don't, yeah. But there's still some consequence, maybe. In terms of karma, there's a greater consequence, okay, because, we've killed someone wrongfully. And so there's going to be payback. So anyways, I'm just saying here that, human laws, the justice, the human, the civil society, the justice system is one thing, but karma goes beyond that, okay? Now, people tend to think of karma as, this, an eye for an eye, right? And that's kind of how some people will explain it. But there's an interesting quote from Gandhi that says, "Well, an eye for an eye ends up making the whole world blind." Okay, so yeah, if we take this justice in our own hands, even if it's well, it tends to be, yeah, it's when people, yeah, you say, oh, so some cultures, I guess, some religions, they're very strict, and when you steal, they're going to chop off your hands. The idea of an eye for an eye, basically. But this is human. Humans are doing that, right? So that's not karmic justice. Karmic justice is, you can say it's God, or it's the universe, this nature imposed this justice. Okay, not imposed by humans. Why we have, I guess, a cycle of violence in certain places is because, yeah, there's this idea of human justice, right? That's uh, done. Now, okay, so yeah, we might not be talking about human justice. I mean, for things like, some areas in the world there's this constant violence back and forth, but okay, well we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, it's because again, we try to play God basically. We try to uh, implement the justice, karmic justice on people, but yeah, I mean, we can't really do that. All right. So, uh, karma can also be, I guess, a test. I mean, well, it's not really a test, right? But it could be debt that needs to be repaid, right? And that's what it is. Now that's kind of like the negative side of it. Okay, so obviously there's you can say there's we call good karma, bad karma, right? Good is things like we get reward, we get a blessing after we did some good deeds. And if it's a debt, yeah, then we need to pay it back, whether we took something that doesn't belong to us, or well, took someone's life or whatever. Right, these debts, they need to be paid back. Yeah, I mean, these are the consequences basically we're dealing with, and but they should also be the lesson that we learn too, right? The basically we say we should learn from history so that we do not make the same mistakes, repeat the mistakes of history, right? So the same thing. Uh, Now, of course, we don't necessarily know what we've done past lives, right? So this, the whole karma thing extends over many lifetimes. So obviously, but when things happen to us, yeah, we have to kind of think, well, why is this happening? Everything happens for a reason. Okay, so we need to understand that everything we can learn from it. Let's put it that way. We need to learn from everything that happens to us, right? Good or bad. Uh, I mean, if we understand karma, understand the law of causality, then we will realize that, oh, okay, yeah, this is due to the law of causality. A lot of things are, yeah, again, uh, best lessons, right? Learn at the worst times, right? So when things are bad, we can learn a lot. Um, Assuming that we can get over the fact that, oh, something bad is happening to me, and that's the key. It's our mindset. We have to change our mindset. Okay, we feel like I'm a victim. As a victim, you're seeking justice. Then that's going to be very difficult to we talk about resolving karma a little bit later. But that mindset needs to change. And how do we change that? Well, we have to have this understanding of karma, what causes it. Okay. Okay. So, in life, yeah, everything that we experience in life, you can say is related to karma. Some you can say maybe more so than others. Usually it's some specific event, something that happens to us. Okay. Uh, that we say, oh, that's karma, right? But you can say everything. I mean, a lot of stuff that you can say it's kind of what we call neutral karma, things that we do or things that happen. It's not no big deal. It's nothing, um, and doesn't really you can say doesn't really affect things or create good or bad karma. Then it's not that maybe it doesn't really have much of a consequence. Okay, so. Uh, but yeah, so we talk about good and bad, right? Or what's desirable and undesirable. Now, if we do good deeds, then that could result in desirable karmic results. And that's obviously better than doing bad deeds, okay? That result in undesirable results, right? But thing is, we fall into this duality, right? Good and bad, good and evil. And so if we view things in terms of that duality, unfortunately, it would be kind of hard to get out of this karmic cycle. Okay? Ultimately, we want to break out of this karmic cycle. So this duality trap, yeah, it's one reason why we cannot transcend the cycle of life and death. Right. So that goes back to our mindset. We have to, you know, be we have to awaken. We have to awaken to the truth and enlighten ourselves. Okay. Okay, so this law of karma, right? It's basically it's the universal law of cause and effect, or you can call it karmic justice. You could say there's no such thing as maybe an accident. Things happen for a reason. There's a reason. Okay, especially, yeah, I mean, well, in this from the scientific point of view, we can also say that, right? Everything happens according to cause and effect, right? There's things follow certain principles, certain laws of nature, right? Uh, that that make things happen, and so in terms of karma, human actions, well, not just human actions, but all sentient beings, um, they're subject to this law, right? But the thing is, things don't happen in the way that we might like, perhaps, or even sometimes, right? People, they commit a crime, they break the law, but they don't get caught. The long arm of karmic justice, however, we cannot escape. Okay, so even if in this lifetime we committed some, quote unquote bad karma, uh, and nothing seems like nothing happened to us. Okay, we didn't suffer any consequences of it in this life. Don't worry, it'll catch up to us in the next life or the next, whatever. At some point, it will catch up to us. Okay, that is, this is the universal law of cause and effect, right? We cannot escape it. Um, why? Because basically, anything we do, all our deeds are planted in what's called this field of karma. It's planted in what's known as the alaya consciousness or the eighth consciousness, right? Everything, right? It gets stored there. And they're kind of like seeds that are planted. Yeah, you can say they're planted there. The seeds are stored there. Okay. And when see karma requires for it to uh, for the effect, right? The okay, so we plant the cause, and then when do we see the effect or the consequence? Obviously, it could be after a certain period of time, but there are a lot of, you can say, conditions surrounding that, right? It's not that straightforward. It's like, oh, okay, I did this, committed this karmic sin, let's say, right now, and then God suddenly punishes me right away, right? Um, that's people call that instant karma, right? uh, but but it doesn't work that way, right? So yeah. Now, okay, so basically these are the deeds that result in consequences. So these are stored in our eighth consciousness, our Laya consciousness, and it's like a black box, right? We have this black box that has infinite storage. So our whole lifetime, well, not just this lifetime, but all our past lifetimes, it's all stored, all our karmic seeds are stored there. And so, and then, depending on, whether you consider them good, bad, whatever, neutral karma, they're all stored there. And in a future time, when the conditions are right, okay, so the conditions, yeah, I mean, let's say we talk a bad case, we kill someone. Well, obviously that person is dead and isn't gonna get us in this life. Okay. Now, of course, as a spirit, they're still they have a being still. Okay, they don't have a physical being, but they still exist, right? They still have their existence in a non-physical form, right? They can still get us, right? But again, it gets very complicated because how all this karma. Because if you imagine all the things we've done in our countless lifetimes, uh, how does that all work itself out? Okay. Um, it's kind of like in computer science they talk about scheduling problems. Scheduling problem is a very difficult problem. How do you schedule things? So obviously the timing, because everyone also has their own karma, and so how how does it work out to such that okay, eventually these two people who have this karma between them, you know meet again. Now, they may not meet again as humans. They might meet again as, a human and an animal, or two animals, or whatever, and resolve their karma. But so it's very complicated, and so that's why karma. There's usually no such thing as what we call what some people might call instant karma. I mean, that's not a right way to say it, but there is. Okay, well, I will say that for us as Tao cultivators, we receive the Tao blessing. There may be certain deeds that we do that perhaps will incur uh, the karmic consequence in this life, or pretty, I wouldn't say immediate, but relatively soon. Okay, in this life, though, right? Because sometimes the karma consequence won't happen until the next life, or even two or three lives later. Okay, because it depends on a lot of things, right? But anyways, okay, so uh, and so we plant the seed, and then we reap the fruit when the conditions are right again. So and one of the conditions, if we are attached to things, we basically it's like you plant the seeds, right, of let's say a vegetable or a plant, right. The conditions have to be right for it to germinate and grow, right. They have to have they have to be in the soil, and they have to get, the temperature has to be right. Maybe they need some water. Uh, and once they start germinating, they germinate and start growing, then, yeah, they need sunlight and all that stuff. So those are the conditions, and the same thing, right? So for karma consequence, and we can try to avoid creating those conditions, some of those conditions, right? So we can't control everything, right? But some things we can control. Uh, things that we can control are in our mind. Okay, that's really the only thing we can control. that we can is what's in our mind. Okay, so if we can control that, then we're a long way there to, uh, you know, kind of stopping or preventing the consequence. So, why? Yeah, this karma again. It this So we have like laws of nature. They pertain to any they pertain to energy and matter, okay, in this whole universe, right? Um, but the law of karma basically it pertains to sentient beings, because we have this true self, Buddha nature, true nature, whatever you want to call it, soul, right? um, and wherever it is, it can because you can say we have free will, right? We can choose to do something, right? Choose to do or not to do. Okay, I guess that's the question, right? To do or not to do. um, but because we make those choices and we act on it, then that potentially creates karma, right? And so, you know, yeah. So this is basically, saying, right? Sentient beings, right? It doesn't matter whether they have a form or no form that we cannot see. Spiritual beings, right? Uh, if we take a life, right, we plant the cause in this world and suffer the consequences in the underworld. Okay, so yeah, this specifically talking about taking a life, but yeah, any kind of action that creates the karma, right? The other thing, we kind of like say, oh well, you know, this karma, right? How do I know what I've done, right? So a lot of things that basically, if we want to know what we did in the the causes from the past, right? We have to observe our current circumstance and experience. What's happening to us in this life, right? Is the result of the karmic causes that we planted, the karmic seeds that we planted in previous lives. Okay? And to know what our future holds, well, then we should observe what we do in this life, right? So again, it's a choice that we make. So once we have this understanding, oh, wait a minute, karma, things are happening to me that seem to be out of my control, but I can control what happens to me in the future, right? I can take control of my actions. I need to take control of my deeds, what I do. Okay. So that's why, well, that's why people cultivate. Okay, cultivate and nurture, their virtues, form merits. That's how we can take control of our destiny, right? Okay. So planting seed karma, right? There's several types of karma, I guess. The most, I guess you can say, all right, so the two categories, individual or personal karma. Basically, this is one person deciding to do something or doing something that then affects someone else or, has some consequence that creates or plants the karmic seeds of some consequence. So that's one individual doing it. Now, so this is obviously so when we talk about karmic justice, right? It's universal and it's fair. Okay, it's always fair because everything's recorded very clearly in our eighth consciousness, right? In the field of karma. Everything is there. So and the law of karma, the karmic justice will use that, so to speak, use that information, use that what's in that black box to say, oh, okay, so this is what you did, and this is the consequence. This is what's going to happen to you. Okay, so that's this is we're talking about here individual, so one person, right? So this is when so we see when something happens to a particular person, one person, just uh, yeah, it could be well, okay, again, someone uh, taking kind of a almost a worst case, bad, very bad case. Okay, someone is crossing the street and they get hit by a car, right? And they kind of suffer injuries or even die, right? But it only affected that one person. So that person is, you can say that that was due to their individual karma, right? Um, okay, so then the second category talk about group or collective karma. Now, this is something where a group of people just do something kind of collectively. Okay, so it may not be that everyone does the same thing, is has the same involvement in whatever they do, commit, right? Uh, you could have like a gang, right? Gang, right? And then they go do things, right? Obviously, so that whole gang, they're creating collective karma. Okay, so even though maybe only one person in that gang like decide, well, because they kind of decide right together what to do, and then but only one person that does it. One person kills someone. Okay, the whole gang is responsible. All right, in terms of the karma, right? They're all involved, right? The thing about collective karma, we have to be careful because this is harder to resolve, right? Because it involves several people, and these people all have to work to kind of, uh, I guess you try to get rid of that karma or prevent that karma from happening. And so that's obviously much harder than having one person. One person can decide his own fate. Um, but a group of people, it's harder because everyone has to do, basically you have to cultivate. Okay, so it's much harder. Um, right. Then so this group also you might not think of it as, but for example, we all live in a country, right? Uh, whether we are citizens of the country or we're residents of the country. Just like okay, so we're here living in the U.S. If the U.S. goes to war, obviously, most of us we're not in the military, right? We're not we're not in the army. We're not actually fighting the war, right? But we do share a bit of that karma, right, from the killing in the wars, right? Because why? That it's the purpose of the war, well, okay, I mean, supposedly it's let's say it's protecting is, I mean, well, they whatever the purpose is, right? There's killing involved, right? Um, then we all have a little share of that karma. Now it would be pretty small, I guess, because we're not really involved, and maybe we even protest, right? Uh, we don't agree with the government policies, whatever they're doing, right? Okay, so yeah, I mean, look, there's what 300 million people in the U.S., right? So our percentage of that karma is very small. Now, people who have more, I mean, obviously the soldiers who are killing, right? They have more direct karma, direct involvement in the karma, in the killing. And also the leaders, right, who give the orders, say, hey, okay, let's go bomb them, right? The leaders have even more, have a greater, you can say they have a greater karmic responsibility or accountability for whatever happens. Okay, because they're usually right. The leaders, I mean, they're the ones who can send thousands of people to their death, right? And so based on their one decision, right? So obviously the consequences will be greater for them, right? So yeah, but just yeah, so that it's just like the so collective karma, yeah, it's kind of a little bit scary. Uh, so it's kind of hard to extract yourself from it, as you live on an island by yourself and not be involved in anything. And then okay, we talk about good, bad. Neutral karma doesn't really uh, have much effect. Okay, the perpetuation of karma is basically things happen and they continue, right? So basically, karma is like okay. So in physics, right, we talk about every action has a reaction, right? Equal and opposite reaction. Every force has an equal opposite force. Okay, so that's basic physics. So it's identical, right? Both sides. So you do one thing, you do A, the other one does A back. Okay, so uh, now perpetuates karma. Well, why does karma perpetuate? Well, either like we're trying to escape, we're trying to avoid the karma, right? If we're trying to avoid it, um, it'll try to keep coming back until it gets resolved. Resolved means, well, whatever was done before to create this karma, it needs to be resolved some way. It could be in the same way as it was done in the first, by the first person to the second person, the second person doing it back, or it could be slightly different. Okay, but if it doesn't get resolved, right, it's going to continue, right? So we have to be careful. So this is where we also have to adjust our mindset. Say, we don't want to suffer the consequences of karma, but at the same time, we want to resolve it. Okay, because if we don't resolve it, it's going to come back to us in a future time, right? What goes around comes around, and it will eventually come around again. Um, and then, well, there are ways of resolving, but now, those who want to think that they can take a shortcut to resolve karma using magic, right? If we cultivate at a high level, um, there are certain, I would not magic, but the special powers, okay, abilities. Um, yeah, that cannot overcome karma. Okay, so you probably heard the story, Buddha's time. Buddha's his clan, the Sakya clan, was under siege by this other king, this other kingdom, and basically, the Buddha knew that he cannot prevent basically the killing of his clan um, because there was this past karma. There was karma that was the seeds of karma were planted in past lives. Okay, so I'm not going to go into this story because there's so much details, but But his, so one of Buddha's disciples, Mahayana, right? He was number one in, I guess the abilities, I guess, that come from cultivation. Uh, and so he tried to save Buddha's clan, but with his special powers, but he couldn't do it. Okay, so yeah, so basically, karma cannot be overcome by magic, cannot be changed. But even the Buddha, right, cannot do that. Right, karma is, it's something that we need. It's we individually and we are held accountable for our own karma, right? And nobody else can change that. Now, okay, so we need to basically uh, do do what we need to do, right, to kind of resolve it and or pay it off, right? So what's causing karma, right? It starts in the mind, right? So that's why Buddha talks about Four Noble Truths, right? The Noble Eightfold Path, because the cause is within us, right? It's in our mind, right? Whether we, Buddha talk, the Noble Eightfold Path, right? I mean, the Four Noble Truths, right? First is that, well, life is dukkha, life is suffering, it's not satisfactory. Why? Because that's it's okay. That's the result, right? That's the effect, and the cause is, well, because we create it. Okay, so through our desires, right, our attachments, and so and that's all starting from the mind. Basically, yeah, we have emotions, right? When we have emotions, we can do things that create karma. Our mindset, right? Our ignorance, our delusion, our attachment, envy, things like that, or yes, greed, right? These things, right, will cause us to eventually do things that those karma, right? And then, of course, also what's important is also our attitude, our intention, our thoughts. All these things will eventually lead to, well, they create karma, right? So, so here you say we start from the thoughts, they lead to words, they can cause us to take actions, which then develop into habits, which then kind of defines our character, which defines our destiny. Okay, so again, everything starts in the mind, and that's oddly enough, that's the one thing that we can control, or we should be able to control, okay, in our lives. We may not be able to control anything else outside of ourselves, but that's the one thing, our mind is something that we must learn to control. So Buddha talks about the 12 links of dependent origination, right? So it's just briefly, we say it's this, it's kind of like this chain link, or that kind of, it's like a chain that's linked into a circle. Okay, so you have ignorance. You start with ignorance, and that causes us to create these mental formations, whether it's like we have preferences, biases, things like that, differentiation, the consciousness, right? Name and form. Okay, actually, this is where, sorry, mental formations is more at a lower level. It's like sensation type of things, and then name and form. We start distinguishing. Talk about, we have our six sense portals, right? We have our five physical senses plus our mind itself is considered one of these sense portals. Okay, um, and then we have contact, right? Contact with the world, or the objects of these senses. We have sensation, feeling, okay, desire. Okay, then that creates sensations, feelings, and then leads to desire and craving. So, for example, oh, something feels pleasurable, or something tastes great. I want to eat more. So that creates that desire, craving. grasping, cleaning, then if it becomes more, it's like, wow, I just have to have it, right? I have to eat this thing every day or whatever, you know. Um, and then that leads to coming or leads to the actual karma, right? The consequence. Uh, and ultimately, it's then goes to birth, aging, and death, right? So this is one big cycle. It's a vicious cycle. If we do not break the link in this cycle, we're going to continue, and this is what leads to perpetual, uh, reincarnation. Okay, because we're constantly creating karma. Um, right? When we create karma, then yeah, that's why we have to. That's why we're in the world. Because we have all this karma, and unless we pay it all off and stop creating new karma, then we're going to be constantly in this cycle. And then, of course, the five skandhas is related to this. This is kind of how we deal with the world, right? The world, you can say, is form, right? That's the external stuff. And then the sensation, when we get in contact with the world, we sense things, then we perceive. In this case here, this is where we can start differentiating things. And volition, where we have kind of intent of, oh, I touch something, feels hot, and then my reaction is to pull my hand away from it, right? Conscious attachment, then basically we kind of we kind of learn, you can say, we learn from that. Well, in this case, there's a simple one, where we encounter something that's hot, uh, and it kind of hurts, right? Causes pain, so we pull back, get away from it. So this kind of builds up. We call it a conscious attachment. It stays in our mind, or from our experience. But of course, it could be other things that we do. That we do something, we take pleasure in it. We can't stop thinking about it, right? And we overindulge. Okay, so you know that's kind of how it works. This five skandhas, and that's how we work as sentient beings. So the expression of karma, then, right? So reaping the fruit of karma, individual karmas. There's lots of ways that can happen, right? So we talk about cancer or maybe other diseases or conditions, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a very serious thing, right? Like terminal cancer, right? That happens, but it's not always like that. Okay, so it depends on the karma, right? The severity of the karma. Um, Accidents, right? What we call accidents that happen. Um, Again, depending on the severity of the karma, uh, right? And then there's also like premeditated type. Yeah, so things that we call accidents, and then there's other things that like premeditated murder or going to stealing something, right? Someone thinks about, hey, yeah, I'm gonna plan this heist, uh, but so those are more premeditated actions. And so these things, right? So and then so basically, well, okay, so we're talking about the consequence, right? So this is someone doing it to us or whatever. Uh, and so um, yeah, cancer, why cancer? Cancer is, although you can say that there's a cause. Usually, it's due to some mutations in the cells, okay, that cause them to become cancerous. But what causes the mutations, right? There could be different causes. Radiation, of course, is one, or chemicals, environment, whatever. But uh, so that's something that's also, it's hard to pinpoint, right? This what's the cause of the cancer? Why did why did that happen? Why did he get it? So that's why cancer is generally a karmic disease. Okay, so if we have cancer, then we should know that we have karma. Okay, that's due to our karma, and we should take appropriate action. Now, usually, as many masters, they will say, take the vegan vow, whatever, make a vow to bring people to receive the Tao, basically perform merits. Okay? Um, there's only, in this case, once we get you can say the cancer is we already reaping the consequence of this karma, and we need to resolve it. Okay, we need to start to do what we can to pay off that debt. Okay. Okay, so collective ones again. This is what happens to many people at once. Okay, or many people in a situation, right? So whether it's in a car that a bunch of people are in the car, they get in an accident, or it's a bus or a ferry, plane crash, etc. Right? Or it could be natural, or it could be calamities such as war or natural disasters. You're in an earthquake or tsunamis, hurricane, tornadoes, whatever. When people find themselves in that same situation, in that one event, then they are part of that collective karma. But of course, not everyone will necessarily uh, perish in that situation, so you have plane crashes where maybe there is one or two survivors. Okay, so they were part of that collective karma, but they did something perhaps to uh, avoid the same consequence, um, or I guess there is the possibility that they really weren't supposed to be there, and so they were spared. Okay, but perhaps there is still some karma involved there. Okay, it's very hard to say. Okay, but in general, yeah, when things happen to a lot of people, in a particular event, then that is collective karma. Now, so we say, oh yeah, why do bad things happen to good people? Okay, so yeah, that's one of the things. If we don't understand karma, we don't understand this causality, then yeah, that's a normal question to ask. Um, but because we don't see the karma, we don't see the seeds of karma that they planted previously, right? Um, so basically, that's something that we have to understand, right? You say, hey, I'm a good person. Why did this thing happen to me, right? Uh, so that's something you have to know. Okay. Well, so you have an accident here, but some people can walk away from the accident, and so that's something different. We cultivate it's possible, right? So there's also this chain reaction of karma, right? Karma consequence, right, as the cause of another karma, right? So so basically, right, every result or effect of the karma can also be the cause for the next karma, right, or another karma. So it can be like this chain reaction that happens. Depends on what we do, right? If let's say, oh, so we look at, I don't know what's happening in the Middle East. Okay, so there are certain peoples they're just like just fighting each other. Okay, back and forth, back and forth, doesn't stop. Uh, it's like who started first, right? Well, even if you can point out to who started first right now, but it's this is multi-generational, right? It's so you cannot go back to the beginning. You don't know who started first in the beginning, and so that's why this cycle continues. Like, oh, okay, you kill our people, we're going to kill you. Okay, so because as they think they're doing justice, like, okay, you kill one of us, we kill one of you. But then that if the mindset is like that, then it's going to go back and forth. It's never going to end, right? Because they're going to say, hey, wait, you killed one of ours, whatever. Then we're going to kill you back. Okay, so that's the vicious cycle of violence doesn't end. Now, there's something called commutation of karmas, which means basically, and this usually applies to people who are cultivating, right? Um, and basically, several lifetimes of karma can be resolved in one lifetime. Think about that. So that is basically, uh, what would normally happen in multiple lifetimes. Because again, remember I mentioned earlier about the scheduling issues, like things can't all happen at once. Okay, so it's going to happen over time at different different conditions, and but potentially things can happen all at once, and that can basically resolve more than one of the karmas. Okay, or maybe resolve all the karmas. So let's see, it's time here. Basically, there's this boy. Well, okay, I don't know. Maybe you've heard this story before, but there was this boy in this village. He was raising money uh, to build this monastery, right? And you know, and he's basically sold buns to steam buns, whatever, to help fund it. But he was fired and lost his job. Then later he got some kind of skin disease. The monk was grateful to the monk, right, and told him that hey, if he ever needed help, he could seek help from the monk, right? So the boy left the village, and in those years he also became blind due to poor health. Okay, so one day he remembered what the monks told him and came back to the monastery. The monk was surprised to see that he was blind, but led the monk to stay at the monastery, right? And not too long afterwards, right, one night, he was now a young man. He's making his way to the outhouse, but he fell into a well and drowned. Okay, so the monk and the villagers, they were shocked at what happened, right? The people were asking, why such a good person, right? This boy who was raising money to build the monastery, uh, why he performed all these good merits. Why should he suffer and die the way he did? So the monk then explained that originally the boy was destined to suffer in 3 lifetimes, right? First with the disease, second with the blindness, and then third by drowning. But because of his merits, his karmic debts were all repaid in that one lifetime. Okay, so it could be a good thing. I mean, we maybe from the human, you can say from the human mind, human point of view, it's like, that's bad. That seems worse. But actually, that's only if we look at this one lifetime, right? But we know that you know life goes is continuous, right? Many lifetimes. Okay, so and we don't want to suffer any more than we have to in multiple lifetimes. So as Tao cultivators, yes, we can, kind of resolve these debts in this one lifetime. Now, maybe actually, we don't necessarily can, resolve all of it, but we can carry some of that with us, but we have to come back in the future again. So ultimately, we're probably better off kind of resolving it all at once, in this one lifetime at least, so that we don't have to come back. Okay. We can also, reduce the severity of karmic consequences again through our, what we do. So forming merits, things like that. Okay. Particularly about eating meat here. Okay. So since the beginning, not all sentient beings are related to each other by karma. Because of this karmic relationship, we should not eat meat. Okay. So again, this is one way if we want to stop creating that kind of karma, the debt of, to other sentient beings, we should not eat their flesh. Okay. We need to accept it, that this karma and this law of causality, it is, it's the truth. And the fact that, yeah, live is to suffer. We have to pay back our debts. But if we do not accept it, right, we blame others, try to fight it, then that will only perpetuate the karma, right? So it won't resolve it. And so then the suffering will continue, right? In many lifetimes. Blaming, pointing the finger, right? That's not a way to resolve karma. Okay, so just like Jesus said, you turn the other cheek, or whatever. I mean, just forgive and forget. That's the best way to kind of. We have to let it go, right? Okay, we have to change our mindset and attitude, right? Every experience is a lesson, right? You know, when we have losses again, so there's the thing. And we need to learn from that. We also should view it as something that we gain, we learn something from it. Okay, and that hopefully we learn that to do better. Okay. All right. So we have to let go of, anger, hatred, complaints, let go of prejudices, stubborn views, ignorance, let go of desires, be grateful and appreciative. Okay. To stop creating karma, right? We have to be kind of do things because we want to perform merits that have no motive, right? We're just doing it. Initially, we might say, "Oh, okay, I have this karma. I need to resolve it, so I need to perform merits." Yeah, I mean that might be our reason for doing it, but ideally, we do things without thinking of that. We just do it because it's a good thing, the right thing to do, right? So we have to also, uphold the precepts. Don't do these things. No killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct or overindulgence. No wrong speech. No uh, intoxicants, right? Be always mindful and aware of not just what we're doing, our conduct, but our words and also our what's in our mind, right? So again, this is like the 10, this expansion of the precepts, basically. Okay, so but anyways, things that we shouldn't do, right? So because our holy teacher he says, right, we can't control our mouth, we can't gain respect from others, we can't control our temper, cannot change our fate, right? We cannot control our heart and mind, we cannot transcend the bitter cycle of birth, life, and death. Okay, so so basically, um, basically we need to, yeah, we have to control control our mind, right? Control ourselves, right? So precepts, discipline, we need to have that. Um, well, we can repent, atone for our sins and wrongdoings, right? Cultivate internally, correct our bad habits, faults, get rid of our bad temper, clear our mind of bad thoughts, feelings, be more virtuous, filial practice, our virtues. Um, these things we have to be sincere, of course, when we do this. Sincerely atone. I mean, although we may not know exactly what we did in the past to cause, to get to suffer the karma that we have now, uh, we have to be sincere about wanting to uh, improve, elevate ourselves to do better, do more for others. Okay. Um, so perform and dedicate merits, right? You can recite sutras, do vows, okay, help in Tao and temple affairs, propagate the Tao, right? Try and do everyday good deeds, right? See, because merit, right, that's the currency that can pay back karmic debts, right? So, potentially that can, even if we have cancer, potentially, I mean, assuming that it's not like too heavy a debt that we cannot pay off, merit can potentially overcome that, resolve it. But again, we have to do things that uh, dedicate ourselves. You can say, I mean, okay, maybe unless we are in that kind of a situation, most of us probably wouldn't say, oh, I'll dedicate my life to this. Okay, but but yeah, don't wait until it's too late though. We don't know what kind of karma we have. What's waiting for us, right? We can say, we can do, repentance, do the bowing. Yeah, okay, I won't go into this, but uh, we can make vows to benefit others. That this is usually how we can do that. Okay, let's see. Okay, so so in the Bible, right, in Romans, it says, "Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everybody. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my friends, but leave room for God's wrath, where it is written, 'It is mine to avenge; I will repay,' says the Lord." So here, this I think it was this Paul, I think, who wrote this, but anyways, yeah, the message is, you don't take justice into your own hands. Okay, so karma, there will be karmic justice, and so, but we should try our best to try to dissolve any of these types of karmic affinities. Okay, always so have our correct mindset and attitude. Always self-reflect and introspect. Stop doing those unwholesome deeds and perform true merits. Always be grateful and forgiving. Uphold the precepts. Okay, so be more selfless, right? Do more for others, right? Stop thinking about benefiting oneself over others, right? Because that ultimately will can get into conflicts and create karma, right? I'll sincerely repent. Okay, I don't know, this ordering's messed up here. Okay. So we want to, that's why we always talk about let go of all karmic affinities, not give rise to a single thought. Okay, so we do things effortlessly and without agenda or motive. Okay, every day is a chance to not create new karma and to pay off karmic debts. So hopefully, we learn that this karmic causality is not something that we can escape, and therefore whatever we've done, we have to pay back for. Okay, pay back. So that's something to guide us into doing what's right. Okay, if I had said anything wrong or not satisfactory, I ask the Buddhists for forgiveness and also ask Transmitting Master and lectures for their corrections. Well, and I also dedicate the merits for this class to all those who need it. Thank you.